By kind of moving our coding over to a playground, we kind of instantly see those results showing up in the results sidebar over on the side, or in a few cases in the console at the bottom. So we never have to push the play and build or wait for the simulator to build, right? We just get that instant result over there, and then we'll be able to copy our code back from the playground and put it into the project file for the app. We've never done that yet, and I don't think I've mentioned that. That's that in both places is actually Swift code. I think we've talked about that a lot, but we've never really talked about copying code back that we've worked on in the playground over to a project file as we're building an app. So that might be something new for everybody. Okay. Here in Schoology, we're going to continue on with our playgrounds. We left off on page 2. So we're going to keep going with pages 3 through 8 of the playground file. And I'll just pop my playground up here from behind. And just a quick review of where we left off. We were talking about using the dot has prefix property of a string to be able to kind of check for how does that string begin? Because as we're building out the brains of this QuestionBot app, we want to be thinking about maybe we can't anticipate every single question that somebody might ask, but maybe we can anticipate a few based on how those questions start. All right, and so that's what this has prefix is going to help us with. We'll look at how does each of our strings start and then kind of make a decision, or our brains of our QuestionBot rather will make a decision about how it's going to respond. We kind of reviewed the function that we're starting to build. So in the app, we just saw just a couple lines of our function there, and our function's called response2. We've got a parameter. We're going to pass in a question to our function. It's going to be in the form of a string. A quick little review for you all coming up. I mentioned there'll be a pop quiz later this week. So if you ever have a colon and then a data type like int or string or boolean, there's a name for this, and it'd be awesome if you knew that for the quiz. All right, so think that answer to yourself really quick. And if I don't see someone pop it in the chat, I'll say it. But I'll give you 30 seconds to think for yourself. So that little review might help you. Whenever we've got a parameter and we have a colon and we're specifying the data type that this is going to be, I don't see anybody popping it in the chat. This is telling us our question that we're going to pass in is going to be in the form of a string. All right. And then we've got this arrow, also something to know for the quiz. This means our function is going to return something to us. In this case, it's going to return a string back to us. And then here in the body of the function, we start going through and building up these conditional statements, right? And here we were working on what if our question has a prefix? So what if this question string starts with hello? Then what's going to happen is our QuestionBot will return this string, why hello there. All right, so it's going to check whatever the question starts with. If that's hello, it'll respond back with why hello there. If this is true, if this phrase, if this question starts with hello, none of the rest of this code runs. It just skips over all this as soon as it finds a true condition. If this isn't true, then it moves on to this next else if, this next condition. Same thing, we're going to check the prefix of this question. So however this question starts, and if you think about grammar, little reminder, prefix is the beginning, right, of that word. So the beginning of that phrase or the question. And if it starts with where, then we'll return the phrase to the north. So if that's true, then your code stops here and it skips over this default. If this is not true, If our question did not start with where, it goes on to check the next condition. All right, so remember control flow. Your code just keeps going until it finds a true statement, right? So if it doesn't find something true in this first condition, in the if or in the else if, then it's automatically going to run the else and it will return that really depends. All right. Our quick little review right here where we left off, we had this question, where should I go on holiday? And we were surprised because it said that really depends over here in our results sidebar. And we were probably expecting it to say to the north because the prefix of the string, the beginning of the string, is the word where. And so what we found out here is that where with a lowercase w works if we change this to a lowercase w, and we give this a couple seconds to update. It tells us to the north, which is what we would expect. But if it has a capital W or an uppercase letter, we don't get the same result. So we find out in Swift language, unlike the English language or English grammar, where with a lowercase w does not equal where with an uppercase W, or it also does not equal where that's completely capitalized. All right. So that seems like it's not going to work with our strategy then to use the prefix. But let's find out how we can fix this by dealing with cases. So in your playground, let's go on and make sure you're playing around in your playground as we're going over this. Try changing those things from lowercase to uppercase, see if it works for you or it doesn't. Make sure you're exploring as we're going. All right. So we're starting to work on matches for these questions in our function or our brains of our question bot, but we're finding out that we would normally think that, like in line 5, the string where is equal to the string where. But when we go to line 6, we find out that where with a capital W does not equal or is not equal to where with a lowercase w. And we see that over here in the results bar. It says that's false. Because remember, 2 equal signs, also good to know for the quiz. 2 equal signs means equals. And we can't use just one equal sign because that means a sign, like when we're assigning a value in a constant or a variable. So this is a false statement. These are not equal. Same with 7. This all capitalized in uppercase letters is not equal to where in lowercase letters, which we see also over here in the results sidebar. It tells us that is also false. All right. So what it suggests here is we could try like writing out every single kind of question iteration, right? So all lowercase, starting to capitalize a letter at a time. That'd be pretty ridiculous though, because once we get past 5-letter words, it would be taking us a long time to write out all of these conditions, right, to check against. So instead of doing that, we're going to use the case of the text before we start matching it up to our conditions. And to do this, we're going to use another one of our properties of strings called the lowercase method. And we see that here in lines 20 through 22. So if we think about our question, we're defining this question, this constant, let question equal, and we've got a string, where are the cookies? We've got another constant, let lower question equal question dot lowercase. So what we're really saying here is this lower question is going to equal this question, which we know is where are the cookies, but we're going to use the lowercase property of that. So all these capital letters will become lowercase letters, which is what you see over here in the results sidebar. All right. So now we know lower question is where are the cookies without any capital letters. And we're going to look at the prefix of where are the cookies to see if it has the word where in there with no capital letters. And we get a true back as our result over here, because where are the cookies does start with where. And after we apply the lowercase property to that using the period and this lowercase, it will remove all these capitalized letters, right? And just leave them as lowercase letters. And if you think about where would you get this from as you're typing, you know how we always see auto completion popping up. If you typed in the name of your constant and then the period, you'll see all the options or all the different properties and behaviors that are kind of called out in this dot notation. All right, so that's how we can find it, is by typing in a period and then looking at all of our auto completion options to be able to find lowercase. All right, so if we now go down to lines 24 through 33 here at the bottom, we're going to rewrite this function to work with whatever kind of case our question might be when it's passed in, right? So if it's something kind of crazy like this with every other letter capitalized or every third letter capitalized, we'll be able to compare that to what we're looking for no matter what. All right, so we're going to start out with our function response to. We've got a parameter here. We're going to pass in a question. Our type annotation tells us that that is going to be a string. It's going to return a string from this function. And then here in the body of our function, we start going through our conditions that we're looking for, right? So right now, we can see over here that it's not working because we're not getting that answer we're expecting, right? We are getting that really depends, which is our kind of our default here. So we think that this should be true with this first one. So let's see how we can fix this up. So first of all, we're going to make sure that since our question we can see down here that we're going to put in is hello, it's got a capital H, and we want to compare it to a lowercase hello. So let's go in here to line 25 and let's apply our dot notation to this. So let's go ahead and make a constant just like we saw up above. So we'll declare this constant. So we're going to we'll call it lower question. You could even call it lowercase question if you want. And we are going to have that equal to this question that gets passed in. And we're going to type a period. And then we should see lowercase as an option for that. And so we'll go ahead and we'll hit return there. Should see our error message go away. All right, I'm going to hit return, and then we can come down here to line 28. Now we're not going to compare question anymore, because we know if we compare question, anyone can type in all these capital letters, right? So we are going to have our condition look at this lowercase question. So I'm going to add lowercase on the front of that and capitalize Q to match up. We're going to use this dot notation. So we're looking for the prefix of our lowercase question, and we want to see if that starts with this string, hello. And then we've got our curly brace, and here's where we have our return statement, because we're going to return a string. So we have return, and if we find hello at the beginning of this string, then what our function here will return is this string, why hello there. If that's true, then our code will stop here. If it's not, then it'll go on to this next condition, this default condition, and it will return that really depends. All right, so in line 35, we call our function by listing out the name, response to. We have passed in a question, hello, that's capitalized. So our function starts to run. It's going to, it gets the string, hello, the capital letter. It's going to return a string. It comes down here and it lets lowercase question equal question dot lowercase. So we're removing those capital letters if there are any. Now there might not be, but maybe somebody did type them. All right, then we start going through our conditions. So remember, our question is now hello with a lowercase letter. So if lowercase question starts with or has this prefix hello, which it does, then we're going to return why hello there, which is exactly what we see over here in the results sidebar, right? And at that point, our code stops running and we do not see this next string because our code doesn't get here. Once it finds a true statement, it stops running. All right. So lowercase is the perfect solution to our problem of not knowing exactly whether somebody will capitalize their question or not when they type it in. Some of my friends never capitalize when they're texting and others do. So we want to be able to kind of check that. All right. So let's go on over to our next page 4 here. And in addition to having general answers, we might want to include special answers to specific questions. And again, we might kind of be guessing, right, as far as what our QuestionBot, what kind of questions it might get, just like we saw the other day when I was typing in questions to the Power School bot, right? Some of them it could answer, and some it didn't either it didn't have that information, or it was not programmed to respond to the way I wrote my question. All right, but let's take a look at how we can work on some more here. So we've got our same function again, right? We're declaring lower question to be equal to the question that gets passed into our function response to. And we're going to use dot notation, that dot lowercase, to make sure that we're removing any sort of capital letters we have with that property. And we can see that over here in the results sidebar. We don't see any capital letters here in our results. And down here on line 18, we do see that this person capitalized the cookies. All right, we're going to start working through our function. So we're removing the capital W. We still have where are the cookies. For our question, we've thrown in a print command here, just so you can see that in the console as well, that there's no longer a capital W to that. All right, then we move on to start doing our conditions check here. So we start with if lower question dot prefix. So that is where are the cookies without a capital W. Does that have the prefix or does that start with the word where? Yes, where are the cookies does start with the word where. So we'll return this phrase, this string, to the north. And you see that print out over here in the results sidebar. So you see how this playground is saving us a lot of time from having to keep going and playing and building our simulator every time we add some code or change some code. So we get those instant results over here. Now, the problem here that we find out is our code has stopped running because it found a true statement. And once it finds a true statement, then it stops. It stops checking conditions once one is true. All right. But if we look at our question, where are the cookies? The answer that we're trying to get is in the cookie jar, right? For where are the cookies? They're in the cookie jar. But instead, we got this answer to the north, like a direction about where we're going. So we didn't get to this next condition to tell us the cookies are in the cookie jar because our question does start with the word where. So we weren't checking the whole question, where are the cookies? Because we found a true condition, so we stopped. So if we're going to take a look at how to fix this so that we get the right answer to this question, where are the cookies, we would need to do something to our conditions here. Let me let you think about that for 30 seconds. We do have all of the correct conditions that we need. So we're checking all of these different conditions. If it contains the string where, if it contains the string, where are the cookies? But what can we do to fix this so that we get the right answer? Change the prefix. That's an awesome idea, Jack. So if we had a different prefix, it might give us a different answer. Both of these questions are kind of start with the same prefix though. So you're absolutely right. If you're trying to get some different, kind of like a different type of information, but we're looking for a location for both of these. To the north is a location, and in the cookie jar is also a location. So awesome guess. But for this particular type of information we want, we want to start both of these questions the same way. Any other guesses? Thanks for that, though. Thanks for being brave. Uppercase W for where will, once we hit this part of our code, right, let lower question equal question dot lowercase, this is going to remove the capitalization. So if we look at the lowercase version of our question, this is kind of like thinking about, right, let me see if we've got another line number. If I come down here to line 24, if I said let name equal this, right? So if we're looking at the lowercase version of this, it means we wouldn't have any capital letters in it. So in that case, the lowercase version of my name would have a lowercase c instead of a capitalized one. All right, so once we hit this line 7, it's actually going to remove the capitalization in a sense, because we're going to make the lowercase version of whatever gets passed in equal this new constant lower question. And then that's what we're going to do all the conditional comparisons on. All right. Thank you, though, again, for being brave. I love brave people who are willing to ask questions and provide answers. What if we had these conditions in a different order, right? Because we know it's going to stop as soon as it asks a question and gets a true, or as soon as it tests a condition, maybe I should say, and gets a true condition, a true response to that condition. So if we reverse these, if we're really looking, as this is telling us, for the answer that the cookies are in the cookie jar, then we need to ask that question first, right? Instead of just where. We need to have the whole question. So in your playground, let's go ahead and rearrange these. So I'm just going to copy this. So starting right here with lower question, and we'll get an error for a second. And I'm going to put that up here in the first condition, and then I'll hit return. And then I'll grab the rest of this and I'll highlight it. And I'm just using Command X to remove it. And I'm going to paste it with Command V onto this next line. And then I'll clean out that. Let me see if, there we go. All the errors are gone now. So it might take a few seconds to get rid of your errors. You could type that as well if you don't want to copy and paste. So you can type it out and then just delete the others. So what we're doing is we're kind of reversing these conditions that it's checking. So we're starting with our first condition. If lower question is equal to where are the cookies, then we'll return in the cookie jar. And our question that was passed in is where are the cookies? Then we use dot lowercase to get the lowercase version of that question, which removes the capital W, and that lowercase question then equals that. Where are the cookies with the lowercase w? You can now see printed down here, again in the console, that there's no capital W there. It is lowercase. And then we return this phrase in the cookie jar because our question matches the string that we're saying it's equal to. And we can see over here in the results sidebar, now we get in the cookie jar. All right. And then our code stops. So we don't move on to line 12 because we now have a correct answer. And in this case, we were told that we want to make sure we get in the cookie jar as our response for where are the cookies instead of to the north, which sounds more like we're maybe traveling or driving or something, right? Okay, let's go on to any questions so far? All right, awesome. So before we do our conditionals check again, just to review, we made a new constant. We called it lower question because we're looking for a lower case. You could even call this lowercase question, which might be even clearer. We're setting that equal to or assigning the value on the right side of the question that gets passed in that is now lowercase. All right. So removing that capitalization from it. All right, awesome. Let's go on to page 5. Now that we know how to deal with people who do and don't capitalize their questions that they type into our question bot, all we have to do is use dot lowercase and set that constant first, and then we can do the comparison to that lowercase question rather than the question that someone typed. All right, so that fixes one problem for us. All right, let's see what else we can do here. We talked about having conditionals. We kind of moved down through those conditions, if and else if and else. Once we get to the bottom and we're just looking at else, that's our default answer. So if there's no matches to the if statements, either if or else if, then that last answer, that else, is our default answer that gets returned. So it's kind of the catch-all, right? If we go through the first ones, then the last one's going to be the correct one if we haven't found anything correct before that. Okay, so what we're going to do next is kind of have a few different responses to make it a little bit more interesting before we get to the default answer. And to do this, we're going to kind of mix it up based on the length of the question that was asked. All right, because remember again, as we're programming a question bot or a chat bot, it'd be impossible to guess all of the questions that somebody might ask us, even if we thought they were just asking about cookies or just asking about PowerSchool. So this might be another way to kind of give some responses back to whoever's asking the question. All right. So another property that we haven't looked at before is dot count. So if we have a string like hello in quotation marks, we can type the dot, and again, we can look at all of the auto-completion options that pop up, and one of those will be dot count, and that will count up the number of letters in that string. So if we looked at hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it is 5 letters, 5 characters long. So whatever our string is, if it's where are the cookies, again, inside quotation marks, since it's a string, and I type in my dot, again, I'm going to see different properties, different behaviors that I can use count happens to be there at the top. Since I already went through line 7, you might have to scroll down to see it in your auto completion. And as it kind of processes that, you saw for a couple seconds, it said, where are the cookies over there? Now it says there's 22 characters. And again, if we move our mouse over those and count them up, got 2, 4, remember a space is a character, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. All right, so that is the result that we get. So it's pretty awesome, right? We can figure out, we can have a lot of uses for dot count, actually, right? If we wanted to have people respond, maybe they're giving an answer and it has to be 5 letters or less, right? If you're thinking about something like the Wordle game. So we could always be checking their guesses based on, first of all, are they too long, before we even start checking anything else. But in this case, we're going to use this letter count, or this character count to be more accurate, to kind of decide what sort of answers the QuestionBot should provide. So if we wanted to choose between 2 different default answers, then we can use the remainder operator to get the remainder of the count after dividing by 2. We've looked a lot at adding things with the plus. We've multiplied things with the asterisk. Here you can see that the percentage character on the top of the 5 key on your keyboard, that is Swift's character or symbol, a keyword for division. So if we had a string that is just the letter A, and we have that alone inside quotation marks, and then we have dot count after that. So we're going to divide 1 by 2, and that does not come out evenly, right? So that is why we see a 1 here, because we have that kind of remainder, because it doesn't divide evenly, even though it's a half, which seems like a reasonable answer, 0.5. But it's not a whole number that divided without a remainder, right? So if you look at line 11, now we have 2 characters, A, B, inside of quotations. And then we use dot notation, dot count. And we've got a space and then the percentage symbol again. And so we're going to divide by 2 again. And here, if we look over now, we've got 2 divided by 2, that's 1, right? And so there are no remainders. It went into that evenly without a remainder left over. So that's why we get 0 over there, because there's no remainder. All right. Let's do a couple more just to make sure we're super clear on this. So we've got ABC, that's dot count, 3 characters long, 3 divided by 2. Again, we have a remainder left over, right? 2 goes into 3 one time with 1 remainder. So we get a 1. Same thing, line 13. If we do the same process, not the same answer, but the same process, we have ABCD dot count. So we've got 4 characters divided by 2, 4 divided by 2, 2 times 2 equals 4. So it goes into that evenly. When we divide that out, there are no remainders left over, so we get a 0. So maybe kind of wrapping your head around the 1 and the 0 and what those are representing. Hope that's clear after a few examples. So if what you're dividing goes into the character count evenly with no remainders, it's a 0. If there are remainders, it's a 1. All right. So then what do we do with that, right? Let's take a look down here at the code at the bottom. So we can use these 1s and 0s to, just like a prefix, to kind of compare what should we reply. So again, we've got our same brains. So you can kind of see this is going to be our code. We're just making it a little longer, a little bit more complicated, doing some testing, making sure it works each time that we do a different activity here. So we've got our function, response to, we've got that same parameter. We're going to pass in a question. It is going to be a string. This function, response to, will return a string to us. Then we go into the body of the function. And here again, we're not sure what people will type when they type. Some people like to capitalize when they're texting, some people don't. So we're going to look at the lowercase version of that question, whatever it is. So we'll make a constant, let lower question, or again, you could make this lowercase question equal to this question that gets passed in dot lowercase. So we're looking at the lowercase version or the lowercase property of this question. So if there were capital letters, we're pretending that they're not there anymore. They're all lowercase letters at this point. All right. And if this is true, then we're going to return in the cookie jar. All right. If it's not true, then we'll go on and we'll look at our next condition. Else if lower question dot has prefix. So if it starts with this prefix, the string where in the lowercase version, then we're going to print out to the north. So if that's true, we stop. If it's not, we go on to our defaults. And in this case, we're going to kind of mix it up with a couple different default answers. But again, we have to give our question bot some reason to make a decision, right? So it's not totally random. We could have random answers, but we want the people typing in questions to think there's a reason they're getting the answer they are. So now what we're going to do is we're going to declare another constant. So let default number equal question.count. So this is the same question they typed in, same question that we made lowercase, but now we're applying the dot count property. So we're going to see how many characters are in the question. And we'll divide that by 2 to see if it comes out evenly. If it does, if that default number is equal to 0, so if it doesn't have a remainder, then we're going to return this string. That really depends. If it doesn't come out evenly, if we've got a remainder from that character count divided by 2, then we're gonna go with the default, which in this case will be returning the phrase ask me again tomorrow. Okay, so what does that look like here as we start going through our responses down here at the bottom? So we have, where are the cookies? And that's our question that we're going to pass in. We're going to get a string back as we start processing through our function here, response to. We let lower question equal the lowercase version of where are the cookies. So we're removing the capital W from that, right? And then we look at our first condition here. If where are the cookies without a capital W equals where are the cookies, those match, right? Because we've removed our capital W. So it's true. So we return in the cookie jar, which is exactly what we see over in the results sidebar. All right. If someone types in, can I have a cookie? All right, let's try that one out. So we start running our function. Response to, we typed in that question, can I have a cookie? We're going to get a string back. We're going to declare this constant. We're going to set lower question equal to the question, can I have a cookie? And it's going to be the lowercase version of that. So we're removing any capital letters. So no capital C. All right, now we start checking our conditions. If can I have a cookie with a lowercase c equals where are the cookies? So right now we know, oops, this is not true. These are not equal, so we skip over this next line and we go on to our next condition. Else if lower question, can I have a cookie without a capital C? If that has the prefix where, Well, nope, it does not start with where. So we are going to skip over this next line and we're going to check our next condition. So we automatically move into this condition because the first two weren't true, and else is our default condition. All right, but now we have let default number equal question, can I have a cookie? Dot count. So we're going to count up our characters 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Did everybody get 20 there? Or did I miscount as I'm looking at the screen? Anybody get anything other than 20? Don't forget to count your spaces. Those are characters, right? All right, so that should be 20 characters. All right, so question.count is 20 characters divided by 2. So 2 divided into 20 is 10, no remainder. All right, so then if our default number, so we're going to check our first condition, if default number is equal to 0, yes it is. 20 divided by 2 is 10. There is no remainder left over. So that is a 0 for the remainder. Then we're going to return that really depends. So if we look down here, can I have a cookie? We do have the answer, that really depends. So our code then stops and we do not get to this last default response for the conditions here because we found a true statement. So we can stop. All right. One more. All right. We call our function. And for the quiz, remember that to call a function, remember in the function itself, nothing's happening, right? We've got our code here, it's set up, but until we call the function, nothing happens up here. So we call the function by writing out the name of the function, response to. In this case, it has a parameter asking for a question in the form of a string. We have typed in, please, can I have a cookie? All right, our function starts running. We're going to let the lower question or lowercase question, if you want, equal question dot lowercase. So the lowercase property or the lowercase version of our question would be, please, can I have a cookie with please not capitalized and I not capitalized either. All of these letters would be lowercase. All right. So now we start checking our conditions. If lower question equals, where are the cookies? No, it doesn't. It does not have where are the cookies in it. So we skip over line 20. We move on to our next condition and we check that. Else if lower question dot prefix. So if please can I have a cookie with no capital letters, does that start with where? Does the phrase start with where, or a question start with where? Nope, it starts with please. So this is not true. So we skip line 22 and we go to our default condition else, and we're going to do what it says. And so we start going through the code here. Let default number equal question dot count divided by 2. So we're going to count up the characters in our question. So you count and I'll count, and then type in the chat what you get. Make sure you count your spaces. Only one brave person. I should start giving bonus points for brave people, right? I like that idea. Thank you. Thank you for being brave. Maybe I miscounted. Let me double check again. Remember, we should count our spaces. So if our question is, please, can I have a cookie? Sometimes it makes my eyes tired to look at these letters when I'm counting. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 27. So we should be getting 27. Sometimes I forget to count my spaces here. We don't need to count the quotation marks. I forgot to mention that. Those Swift know that this is a phrase, but if we're looking at the question itself, it's what's inside of quotation marks. So if we add in all of our spaces, we should get 27 here. Thank you, though, for brave answers. I really appreciate that. So if we take 27 and we go back into our code here, let's see, let default number equal question.count. So that's 27 divided by 2. So 27 divided by 2 is going to be 13 times 2 is 26 with 1 left over. So we've got a remainder. So if default number equals 0, as in there's no remainder, that's not true. We do have 1 left over. So there is a remainder in this case. So we're going to skip over line 28 and we'll move on to line 29 else, and we'll return this last statement because all of this code above we couldn't do. So we'll return ask me again tomorrow. And if we look at our results sidebar, there's our result. Ask me again tomorrow. All right. So another way to kind of help maybe our chatbot or question bot decide how to answer questions that don't start with where, that maybe aren't about cookies, or like a direction as in which direction we should go or where we should go on vacation. So kind of something that could help people maybe think about reformatting or reformulating their question to ask it again, depending on what sort of answer they get. All right, just to make their answers a little bit more interesting, right? Okay, one more exercise to do here before we move on. What if we wanted to divide by 3 instead of 2? How could we change this up so that we're getting 3 different possible responses rather than just 2? Let me let you think about that for a second. And we do get a hint that question.count divided by 3 will give you a result of 0, 1, or 2. And here's where I think this becomes a little confusing, maybe in my mind, around remainders. Because before it was pretty clean, right? If it divided evenly, it was 0 for the remainder. If you had 1 left over, and maybe just all of our examples have always had 1 left over, then it was 1. Now it could be 2. All right, should we try this one? Okay, first thing we're going to do is we are going to go back up into our code, and we're going to change this divide by 2 to divide by 3 instead. And then let's see. So we've got our function response 2. It's going to return a string. We're going to lowercase our question and let that equal to lower question. We're still going to ask where are the cookies first, because that way we'll know if they're asking about cookies or if they're asking about a direction. Because if these are reversed like we saw before, then we're not going to get to where the cookies are, because we'll think that they are going north instead. All right. All right. Then we have changed our conditions here. So we're going with else, and then let our default number equal our question dot count divided by 3. Okay. If our default number, so if whatever the question is equals 0, we're still going to type in that really depends. Now we've got 3 different results though. So instead of just saying else, we are going to make our next condition here an else if, and now we're going to check our default number. And we're going to see if that is equal to 1, right? And if it is, then we're going to still respond, ask me again tomorrow. All right. Then we're going to come down here because we've got else if. We're going to add in an else. And here is where we're going to need another curly brace. I believe. Yes. And now we're going to type in our return statement. And if we want to make a little note for ourselves, we can put in a comment here. This is if the default number equals 2, right? Which we don't technically have to say because this is our default. This is the else. But just to keep it straight in our mind, we could add our comment in here with 2 slashes, which means this is not going to run that line. Then we're going to return. We need to say something. Let's say, right? Because we need to return a string. Let's say, I'm not sure I understand. Let's go with that. All right. You might have to hit return to get rid of your error message, or it might just go away. Okay, so now if we divided our question count by 3, we'd have 3 possible ways, depending on what that question is, for a QuestionBot to respond, right? So if somebody's asking, where are the cookies? It's going to say in the cookie jar. If they say, where should I go on vacation? It's going to say to the north. If their questions don't start with where, then it's going to divide the number. First of all, count the number of characters, then divide by 3. And depending upon if there's a remainder, there's not a remainder, it'll say that really depends. If there's a remainder of 1, it will say ask me again tomorrow. If there's a remainder of 2, then we're going to get this last default response where it's just going to say, I'm not sure I understand. All right, so let's try calling. Let's just make up a question and see if we can figure this out. Adai, did you have a question? No, you won't. No, that's an excused absence. Yep, so you're good. Good question. All right. In your playground, let's type in a question. So we're going to call our function. Because we've got a parameter, it's waiting for us to type a string in. So make sure you hit your quotation marks. Let's see. So what is your favorite type of cookie? Let's see what happens. Ask me again tomorrow. So we had a remainder of 1 left over. Maybe if I change this a little bit, what are your favorite types of cookies. I still get ask me again tomorrow because I think I added 3 characters. Um, what I'm trying to get our last response there. So I need a character count with a remainder of 2. What if I said, what is your favorite type of cookie and what is your favorite type of cookies? Oh, so not grammatically correct, but it did give me the response. I'm not sure I understand. Maybe because it didn't like that grammar. All right. Or if I added an exclamation mark in here and I took out the S, what is your favorite type of cookie? I'm not sure that you understand. All right. So based on our character count and dividing by 2 or 3 and then using the remainders, if we want to have 2 possible responses that are kind of random or 3 responses that are, again, kind of random, then we can do it in this way. Based on, again, we can't guess every question that they might ask. So this might help to have somebody, again, reformulate how they're going to ask the question. All right, let's go one more page here. I think we have time. So we are doing really well here on getting through building out the brains of our question bot. Anybody have any questions about any of the things that we've been working on here? Either using the dot lowercase property to, I don't want to say exactly remove capital letters because we're technically not removing them, but we're looking at the lowercase version of that then, making all capital letters lowercase. The dot count property where we're counting up all the characters. And again, remembering that characters can be letters, it can be special characters like exclamation, number sign, dollar sign, all of those. It could be blank spaces when we hit the space bar. That's technically a character. All right, so counting all of those up, and then if we want to throw in some kind of random responses so that somebody isn't just continuously getting the response, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't know, right? That we probably wouldn't think that was helpful at all. And then we'd be like, what does it know, right? So in this case, we could throw in some random responses based on what people are typing to, again, try to help them type something that maybe we have programmed our question bot to be able to answer. All right.